All right, everyone. Well, thank you for joining again. Very happy to spend some time with you this afternoon. My name is Patrick Cournoyer, and I'm the Vice President of Customer Success here at Peakon. It's my colleague, Michael.
Hello, thanks everybody for joining.
So on a monthly frequency, we'll be sharing these webinars with you. And something that I think is really the most beneficial of these is that you can join when you can. And if you're not able to join, we'll be sending out the presentations that we go over, and we will review. You can review the content on your own. But we hope that you join them because we want to get feedback from you about if you think that they're valuable and if you think the topics that we're covering are going to be beneficial for you moving forward. On today's show, we're going to talk about three different topics. The first is a little bit a story and a little bit of insight and context around how HR leaders throughout the Peakon community are really driving change. And we're going to give you a specific story about one of our customers that we've worked really closely with over the last 9 months and the success they've had with moving to real-time surveys. We're going to talk a little bit about feature releases from Peakon. We're always updating Peakon, always driving forward new product options, new product features. So there's some that I'm sure you probably may not know of. And so we're going to be sharing those with you every month. And today we'll share some with you. And Michael's going to share with you some content as well.
Yes, so I'll be going through some of the latest research we've been doing at Peakon, in particular around employee engagement and organizational development. And on the theme that we have for this webinar, it's going to be around Agile and what Agile means in the context of HR. So specifically on today's show, Patrick's going to start with this story.
Yeah, so the first story that we're going to talk about is that this organization that's gone into this real-time mode. And the idea behind this, I'll take you on a little story track with me. So back in June, we had an organization join the Peakon team, and they are a global organization, multiple countries, and a very classic organization. So very strong, very proud lineage history, over 70 years in operation, and had consistently taken a approach of using the quote-unquote annual survey. It was a very large event, and you would do the survey, they would have the survey conducted, and it was just a big event, and a lot of questions for the employees, a lot of time going through the data. And some of the struggling points for them absolutely were getting the data out to employees and managers in a fashion that was going to be useful for them. So obviously, those of you that are using Peakon know that that's exactly what Peakon is designed to do, is to take all of those struggles away from organizations, not only from leadership in organizations, but really from managers within organizations, and put the power of knowledge and put the power of being able to drive change in the hands of frontline managers. So this organization joined up with us, and we started talking, and we were like, we're gonna do quarterly surveys. And quarterly surveys was a big step, right? And for a lot of organizations, that is a big step. You're going from annual surveys to doing them 4 times a year. And there can sometimes be fear within the organization of what is this going to do? Is this going to create more work for us? Is this going to be, is it going to be more difficult? Or are we asking too many surveys? And luckily, this team was very open to understanding our best practices as a company, and really listened to the reasoning why frequency of survey really does change the experience or the engagement approach that the organization was going to have. So the organization ran 2 quarterly surveys and started seeing the brilliance of Peakon in a lot of ways, right? This real-time data was becoming available at the end of each survey. This buzz started to happen throughout the organization, through multiple countries we have real-time feedback, we have these amazing dashboards, and we get actionable insights, and we can start taking action right away. So as we're going through the process of this relationship with the customer, the decision was made after the second quarterly survey. Some leaders within the organization said, I really like the fact that I'm getting this feedback from my employees. My employees consistently have a voice. I want them to have more of a voice more frequently, and I just want this to become part of what we do. I don't want engagement surveys to be an event. I want this to just be part of our business operating practices. And I want for my employees to feel that they're continuously having a way to provide feedback, a way to provide their thoughts on what they love and what they're struggling with. And we know that that changes on a monthly basis, sometimes on a weekly basis. So some of their leaders went and said, I'd like to be a test subject. I'd like to be a test for weekly surveys within the organization. Get very forward-thinking senior HR leader in the organization, and also very forward-thinking CEO, and said, let's try this. Let's try this in a certain pocket of our organization, and let's see how it does. We don't have to jump down the slide with all, a couple thousand employees. We can test it out and see how it does. So we tried it out with 2 divisions in their organization over a 2-month period, and the results were resounding. They saw so many actionable insights. They saw a way how to have open communications with their employees. Their employees started to see it again, just as I get my survey on Monday morning, I answer 4 questions, I have my voice is heard, action is taken, and I continue on. Engagement was not an event, it's a continuous process. So I'm happy to say that just recently about 80% of that organization is going on to weekly, and very soon the whole organization will be on weekly, in less than a year with Peakon. So the idea with Peakon is not that you have to jump into weekly surveys at the start on day 1. We can absolutely phase into it, but what we can do is really help you understand what parts of your organization may be primed for trying out weekly surveys, showing how well it works, help you with making sure that those tests or those pilot areas are successful. And then it just picks up speed in the organization. And the next thing you know, employee engagement is just part of your business process, not an engagement that you have to do every year or twice a year. So a couple of key learnings on that, and this is not a singular story with Peakon. This happens all of the time, but I thought this would be a good one to share with you right now. So some of the key learnings to take away from that is really to take your time with it. There is no need to jump into weekly surveys from day 1. We can help you slowly move into what we call the road to real time. We have a great document for it, but beyond just documentation, our team is here to help you with implementing, getting your organization onto real time, but also helping you understand why that's going to be a benefit to your organization. The second is to allow Peakon to help you analyze results and actions with these pulse groups and then communication. So one of the best parts of how this kind of grew naturally at this organization was that it's a lot of buzz started around it, and we helped the organization with how can we show that buzz and get that out to other parts of the company. Showing results in your pilot group will help drive larger organizational changes because the direct effect has enhanced a specific part of the organization. So what I mean by that is that when there's change happening in a certain part of the company that is starting to spread out and have more organizational change, it's a really good way to show how pulse surveys or more frequent surveys are appropriate for your business. So we have a couple of features that will help you move to real time. So you'll hear us talk a lot, Michael Dean and I will talk a lot about road to real time. We'll talk a lot about the concept of more frequent surveys, because really here at Peakon, we believe that the more frequent the surveys you're doing within your organization, the better the product is going to perform for you. And the better, not just the product is going to perform, but the more empowered your managers, leaders in your organization are going to be behind in the engagement focus within your company. So first is around flexible scheduling. And the way how we do that, we call it actually advanced scheduling. But the way how we do that is if you want to just have a small part of your business be on a small pilot of weekly, we can do that. It will not affect your company rounds. It will not affect your quarterly surveys. We can target scheduled surveys into different parts of your business that are primed for trying to pilot out these new, more frequent surveys. Question distribution, a lot of you know about our question distribution, but we can easily distribute questions when we have a higher frequency throughout that group so that you're getting a really comprehensive look and insight into that part of the company without being overburdened with a lot of questions each week. Small number of questions, high amount of insight because of the question sampling and the question distribution. Automated reminders as well is another product that we have, or a feature that we have within the product. So we have the ability to remind managers when surveys are about to come up. And that's really quite helpful because it takes the pressure sometimes off of admins for having to say, oh, don't forget, you have a survey starting in 3 days. The system can do that for you. So automatically, when there's a new survey coming out, the system will notify your manager so that they're well aware that there's a survey that's going to be starting soon. And also another key factor about regular surveys is something called acknowledgement. So a lot of you know about, you should know about the conversations, everybody, or comments. Comments, a big part of the product is comments. A big part of the feature with that is conversations, where you're able to start an anonymous conversation with an employee. However, we have a lightweight version of that, which I personally feel is the most impactful part of our tool, which is acknowledgements. It's with one click, a leader can acknowledge to that employee that they have read the comment and responded to it in one of 4 options. Allowing an employee to know that their voice has been heard is not only going to make them feel great, it's also going to encourage them to continue to participate in future surveys because they know that their feedback is being heard. So I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Michael Dean now. I've been talking for a bit, but Michael's going to take it now and tell you about some of our latest updates.
Perfect, thanks Patrick. Right, we're going to quickly whiz through some of the latest releases. So on to the first one. And this has been a very popular request we've had, probably one of the clearest feature requests we've ever had in Peakon, to be honest. As soon as we launched To Benchmark, which is a way of helping you understand what's truly unique about your team by enabling us to model the trends that we see across the Peakon data set into your benchmarks. And as soon as we launched it, everyone said, well, what about locality? Of course, we believe that in certain parts of the world, people are perhaps more negative or more positive than other parts of the world. And we're happy to say we've now built this into the product, so you can go to the settings page as an admin and turn on the local office attribute, and we'll then be modeling for differences between geos around the world. So Asia, Europe, and North America, for example, we'll create these corrections to correct for the different cultures in these parts of the world. On to the next one. The next one is another popular request. That's our open API. So now you'll be able to pull data out of Peakon, for example, into your business intelligence tools. So if you use something like Tableau, you'll be able to get Peakon data onto a Tableau board. It will also make it easier for you to sync employee data with your HRIS system. And the third one is a very convenient feature. If you remember when we used to display comments on the dashboard before, they were in sort of different buckets where you had driver comments, open-ended comments, value comments. They're now all on one page, and there's a lot of functionality that comes with that. So you can search for comments. So for example, if you wanted to hear, I don't know, if there was a project going on in the company, you wanted to check if anyone mentioned that specific project through the feedback, you just put the project name in there and it will find all the comments that have that within them. You can filter by the MPS categories, so you can see all the promoters, detractors, and passives in the comments, and you can filter by the drivers or values, and you can also export all the comments to Excel. So also, this is one of the new ways that we're going to be communicating to you, this once monthly webinar. However, Petros is also doing a once monthly blog post in the first week of the month, where he'll be going through all the new product releases that we've had in the last month. And there's a lot more than we've been able to cover here, actually. I think there was about 15 smaller but very useful updates. So go to the blog and check that one out. We'll be sending out this presentation afterwards. So all these links you see here, you'll just be able to click and go straight onto them. So on to a topic that we themed this webinar around, and that's what does it really mean to take a more agile approach? Now, we've all heard the word agile. We're all supposed to be being more agile, but what is more agile? What do we really mean? So we're going to go through quickly where actually this term comes from and why it's so relevant for us in HR today. So the term actually comes from software development. And a bunch of guys who were thinking about how they should develop products in a different way came up with what's called the Agile Manifesto, which has 12 principles in about how you're supposed to operate in 2001. And the term's been kind of bubbling around since then, but it's really taken off in terms of like the wider business context since this HBR article in May 2016 that explained that projects that had been following an Agile methodology had a higher success rate, improved quality, they were faster to market, and the people actually performing the task were more motivated because of some of the intrinsic qualities of working in an agile way. So let's have a look actually what that looks like and what we, why software development moved from a different methodology and why actually HR is kind of on that methodology, but how we can follow that shift in how we're working. Actually, we can probably go on from this. So this was the older approach to software development. I won't get too technical here, but it was called waterfall. And the idea was that you had these very distinct steps. So firstly, you tried to understand what your customer needs. Then you wrote very detailed documentation around what the software should be built like to support these needs. You then passed this on to some designers. You then passed this on to some engineers who implemented it. And then maybe 6 months down the line, you got some validation of whether the customer actually liked what you'd made. That's kind of how a lot of organizations have actually been doing organizational development based off of engagement surveys. Right? You understood the needs, you then spent some time developing insights, you distributed them throughout the company, then you had your maybe localized action planning sessions, and then after maybe 4 months or so, employees would actually see some change off the back of it. The only problem was that actually it took a year to validate if that was the right thing to do, because often you were doing this on an annual survey. So these are the classic problems with this approach. It's very difficult to know what the requirements are at the start of a project. Customers aren't aware fully what they could really imagine this product could be. And the same is true for employees. They don't really know what change the organization is capable of. And also managers and HR people, they can't foresee how best to execute this plan, or the central planners can't, essentially. This model also can't really accommodate change. It's got very structured plans, and if something comes up after a month or so, for example, when something happens in the organization and then employees are thinking differently, you've got a plan that's essentially going to be out of date. Also for employees, they end up seeing change very late in the process. So you have 3 or 4 months where people are wondering, what's actually going on because of this. And also, as I mentioned, intrinsically, this is not a very engaging process. So I'll have a quick water break.
Sure.
Because when you're just given a plan as a manager, it takes away from your own interpretation of events and how you would like to solve this problem. So how did they solve this in the software world? So what they came up with in software development was this concept of sprints. So you make more lightweight plans, and then over the course of 2 weeks or so, you kind of build something, design something, and quickly get it out there over a 2 week period. And that enables you to essentially iterate on what you're doing. You can get something in front of a customer very quickly, or at least for you to test very quickly and see if that actually works and fulfills the needs. And you kind of solve that. You do this on a continuous basis. Every 2 weeks, you have what they would call a sprint. And then in our world, essentially this process is pretty much the same. You get feedback, you analyze it, you do a much lighter weight action planning process, essentially more individual managers doing their own action planning, and change happens. And then you repeat the process every 2 weeks, every week, or maybe every month. Why this is more successful is essentially down to the fact that you're putting the ability to solve the problem in a more localized way to the person who can actually solve the problem. So if you think about this from a software perspective, you would have somebody who's creating this great big plan at the start of a project doesn't really know how to solve this particular design issue that's about to come up 3 months later. When it's in the hands of the designer who's actually designing it, they'll figure that out, right? Yeah. And it's the same in the people world, right? If you're trying to create this massive action plan on a kind of global level, and it comes down to the manager and it's completely not relevant for them, then that's all going to go to waste. And also with this kind of process, of course, you can change and react much quicker to different demands that happen throughout the organization as the organization changes. Okay.
I'm thinking, Michael, we should write a Peakon manifesto.
We should.
I think so.
That may just happen.
Yeah, you never know, right?
But for now, what we have for you is we have a lot of these learnings we've written up into a document that Patrick mentioned earlier that's called the Road to Real-Time. What we focus on here is essentially enabling you to identify the teams throughout your business that kind of work in an agile way already. And these should be the teams where you would be able to pilot more frequent rounds with Peakon first off. And Petros will actually send this out to you over email at the beginning of next week.
You probably recognize the face in it because Michael Dean is the one that wrote this document, but it's an excellent document. And getting the document as well, please read it over and then reach out to your customer success manager or support@peakon.com, and we can definitely walk you through the benefits of it. But it's a pretty comprehensive document. So So now we're going to go to Q&A, right? So we've got about 5 minutes left, so plenty of time for Q&A. If anybody has any questions, please use that Q&A box in the bottom. Mara, this is another great question. Do you think that Peakon answers need to be made public to the whole company? So this is a very good question, and I'll say that the best success that we have seen with organizations are the ones that are the most open and transparent about results. Now, open and transparent with results does not mean that you have to go and show highlighted segments, for example. We have a great option called Share Dashboard, and what Share Dashboard allows you to do is to share high-level results of surveys, so your engagement score as an organization or by segment. You can see the driver scores. You can also add in priorities or segments from your dashboard. So no comments, but just an overview of the results. And I do think, though, that is incredibly valuable. We have one organization that has thousands of employees, and they shared their company dashboard with every employee so that they could see it. And there's a lot of transparency around that. And then there's also a lot of buy-in from the employees for understanding how their responses have resulted in the dashboard. So I highly encourage it.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, that actually gets us on to one of the next questions, right? People wonder about survey fatigue. In terms of combating that, actually sharing the insights that come out of the surveys is one of the key ways to combat survey fatigue.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably the most important, however, is the acknowledge feature that Patrick mentioned before, because I don't think anyone has ever gotten fatigue from having a conversation. They've gotten fatigue from talking into a black hole. Right?
Exactly right.
So if you've got the ability, and especially for we can't be thinking of this on a level where, as an admin or someone responsible for Peakon, I've got to be sitting there clicking acknowledge for every single question, right? But it's encouraging local managers to be acknowledging a comment. And I, as a person who fills out Peakon survey myself, I basically never get a comment that I've given without some form of acknowledgement from some of the leaders in the business, right? And I think that's how it should be.
And it's very empowering. It's extremely empowering. So. Good. Steve has a question. What are best practices for working with managers to ensure they are utilizing the data in the correct way? Should they focus on opportunities or spend more time digging into the wins? This is a great question, and I'm super passionate about this as well, Steve. So I think that engagement is based off of areas of opportunity, but also what a leader is going really well in a leader in a team. And that Peakon is not just designed to show what the areas of opportunity are. Peakon will show you as a leader where you're doing well. And I personally think, and I know a lot of people at the organization really feel, and also a lot of our customers have seen this as well, that if you encourage leaders for what they're doing well, so let's say leaders have a strength, which is management support, and they also have a strength which is growth for the drivers. But then their areas of opportunity or their priorities are autonomy, let's say, and maybe recognition. There's an easy way to understand what a manager is doing really well in those strength areas. Empower them, encourage them to continue doing them, because if those start to slip, you're probably going to see a decrease in engagement, right? So to continue doing what you're doing, great. But then also look at areas where you have a challenge as well. So I think focusing on what the manager is doing great, and also where the areas of opportunity are, and where there's potentially overlap with that. You look at growth and recognition. We see this sometimes with leaders really strong with growth, but are having some challenges with recognition. It's like, well, is there something small that we could do with changing with recognition in particular, that could get that up? So it's a good question.
Yeah. One more question we've got here is, I'm struggling with belief in the anonymity of the process. Our employees are very suspect. Any suggestions? One suggestion we have is with the email that people get the survey in and the reminders, there's a link at the bottom that takes employees to a page, What is Peakon page. And on there, we've actually created a video that, from an employee's perspective, shows how the feedback is going to be seen. So they see people adding data through the survey, and then it comes onto the back end, and they actually then get to see what the comments page looks like, because that's kind of the page that everyone who's really skeptical thinks, oh God, what if my name's on that? But
exactly.
They can actually see in this video that that's absolutely not the case. Also, if you want just the link to that page for that video, just write to us after, or write to me. It's just michael@peakon.com, and I'll send it to you.
I think we just have time for one more question. And Kara, thank you for this one. Will the tool ever offer predictive analytics based on trends within a certain group to help forecast turnover? And the answer is yes, absolutely. That's one of the product enhancements we're working on right now. So in future versions of these sessions, we will be talking extensively about those. Also in Petros's blog, we'll be talking about that. But the team's been working on that for a bit now. It's coming together quite well. And predictive analytics around attrition is very near and dear to our heart. And we think it's be a great product enhancement as well.
We may even have a beta that they could join.
Oh,
if you'd be interested.
All right.
That's
so
another reason to write to us.
If you are interested in
we can see if that's the case.
That's great. Yeah. So if you are interested in beta testing this, please, you can email me, patrick@peakon.com, or michael@peakon.com, and let us know if you're interested in getting into the beta test of that, because we love beta tests. So.
Right, perfect. I think we've got maybe a few more questions, but we will get back to you after this. Unfortunately, we've kind of run out of time now.
Yeah, but all the questions will be answered, so we'll just get the questions and we'll respond to them and send them back out. So, but I think for us now, for today, thank you for spending 30 minutes with us.